Are the Jaguars in on the wide receiver trade market? Let's talk about it. Now, there are two players that seem to be in on this offseason wide receiver trade market type of thing. And first, we'll talk about T. Higgins, who for me, I think is a little bit less realistic. So I'm going to get him out of the way first. Now, T. Higgins was franchise tagged by the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, so he carries a $21 million cap hit, but he did recently say that he wants to be traded. Okay, like I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure if he wants to work out like a new deal with them, or maybe they said to him that they wanted to work out a new deal, or what the situation is there. But for one reason or another, he wants to get traded out there, and maybe because he feels like as long as he's on the Bengals, he'll always be in the shadow of Jamar Chase, which I think one thing we're realizing is a lot of players, especially wide receivers, are wanting to be the feature player. They don't want to be in the shadow of anybody. And, that's kind of the case with a couple of these receivers today. But, right now, I would think that the Bengals can actually afford T. Higgins. At first, I was thinking, they're not going to be able to afford him, not going to have enough money. But as we're looking around the NFL, a lot of teams are paying a couple of wide receivers. And right now, Jamar Chase is still on his rookie deal. I imagine at one point he'll get extended, because if you're going to keep either T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, you'd probably rather keep a Jamar Chase. But with that said, maybe he is, maybe he just doesn't want to be in a shadow of him. But, the Bengals are definitely not cash strapped, guys. They actually have the 7th most cap room in the NFL per spot track. And they even have quarterback Joe Burrow under like a heavy quarterback contract. Now, it's also a good situation because they actually have a really good quarterback in Joe Burrow. And with this video sponsor, BetUS, Joe Burrow actually has the 3rd best odds at plus 900 to win NFL MVP. And if you take a scroll down, you can actually see Trevor Lawrence on the list. He's actually the 13th highest at plus 2,500. So if you guys want, you can put a $20 on there if you're feeling nice and funny, and you could potentially win $500 by placing that $20 on Trevor Lawrence. Supporting the sponsor really supports the channel as well. So real quick, let's get a quick word from BetUS.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
So I guess the situation with T. Higgins, I just don't know if he's as available as people think. Like the Bengals have made it pretty clear that they don't want to trade him. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, the players do always wind up winning this battle. I just don't know with T. Higgins, like, what are you getting with him? Are you getting a player because right now he's on Instagram posting like weird stories and stuff like that. I just don't know like what kind of person he is, or if he's going to come over here and be annoying. And, I kind of fear, I know this is going to strike a lot of people wrong, but I feel a little bit of like Jalen Ramsey out of him, just always kind of being cryptic on social media. Then we always had to be like, does he like us? Does he want to be with us? This is kind of what I'm feeling out of T. Higgins. So I think with T. Higgins, I mean, right now he's not on a trade block, so we can only speculate on that. But as far as him, I don't know. Now, the more realistic trade option is wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk from the San Francisco 49ers. Now, per Mia O'Brien from 1010XL, there is actually, quote, mutual interest between Brandon Aiyuk and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I'll be honest, I love Brandon Aiyuk, and I've said this before, mainly in like my live streams during the season. Brandon Aiyuk is like my favorite player in the NFL that doesn't have any Jaguars ties or UCF ties, just because when I watch him, he's just a complete player, man. He can, he's down to do anything. Like, he'll go out there and run the routes, but he's also an extremely willing blocker. He'll do every single thing that you ask him to do without really complaining too much. He does that, to his best ability. But, right now he is kind of overshadowed around the San Francisco 49ers offense. And I think that might drive him a little bit crazy, because when you think about San Francisco 49ers, their offense, you're going to think about, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. And then if you go a step further, you're going to think about George Kittle and, of course, their quarterback Brock Purdy, and maybe even Trent Williams before you even think about Brandon Aiyuk. But, for me, I actually think that Brandon Aiyuk is a more complete wide receiver than Samuel, even though Debo Samuel, is a little bit more versatile in what they do for him in the offense. He's a guy that runs all the routes. He gets really good separation. Like I said, he's a very willing blocker, and he gets, he's really, really athletic too. So, with the Jaguars, if the Jaguars were to trade for him, he would become the Jaguars' immediate number one wide receiver, and he'd be the most electrifying wide receiver that the Jaguars have. And it feels like he would be a lot more appreciated in this offense than, maybe people would appreciate him inside of the San Francisco 49ers offense. Now, this one's tough because, what is a trade value for him? In NFL, it's so hard because I feel like in NBA, it's a lot easier to gauge trades because a lot of times it's player for player, or, second round picks aren't as important in the NBA. So you can kind of say, oh, we'll trade this guy for those two players. In the NFL, there's just so many things the way because, you have a player is he on a rookie contract, or, is he on an expensive deal? We remember with Jalen Ramsey, when the Jaguars traded him away when he had a couple years left on his rookie deal, the Jags got 2 first-round picks back. But, when the Miami Dolphins traded for him, the Miami Dolphins just gave up a third-round pick, not because he was so much of a different player than when he was on the Rams and the Jaguars. It's just because of the contract that they're trading for. So with Brandon Aiyuk, he is on his 5th-year option now, much like Calvin Ridley was. And, he would basically need a brand new contract either at the end of this season or, right now or whenever. But, the Jaguars would not have that much control over him for very long. I've seen the most realistic trade for the Jaguars being a first-round pick swap. Maybe the Jaguars move back from 17 to 31, and then maybe they give up a 3rd or 4th rounder. I think that would be probably the most ideal for him. Now, next I want to say this. When it comes to my opinion on it, I want to preface it by saying that, look, I am a huge fan of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm not an expert. I don't claim to know more about the Jaguars than any of you guys. I'm not this NFL expert. I am a huge, huge fan of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The only difference between me and you watching this video is that I make YouTube videos about the Jaguars in my free time, okay? I don't have any inside sources. I don't have any of this, and that. So when the Jaguars do good, I get just as excited as you guys. When the Jaguars do bad, I get just as annoyed as you guys, okay? So with that said, if a trade happened for Brandon Aiyuk, the fan in me would be extremely excited. I would be like, holy crap. One of my favorite players in the NFL is now on the Jaguars. We got that wide receiver 1. Boom. Look, we're going to pull up all the graphics. Our offense is loaded. Look at what we have. But if I were to take the teal shades off and actually look at this thing from a non-fan point and just an objective standpoint, I would look at the Jaguars offense and say, okay, so 4 out of 5 of the starting offensive linemen on this offense are getting paid. They're not on rookie deals. So, they're either older or you're paying them a lot of money. And ideally with an offense, you want a mix of rookie contracts and guys that are free agents and getting paid. Okay. So obviously on the offensive line, it's heavily leaning toward a bunch of free agents getting a lot of money. When you look at the Jaguars' top 3 wide receivers, Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis, Zay Jones, all of them are on free agent contracts. When you look at the tight end situation, the Jaguars' top guy in Evan Ingram is getting a lot of money. And then you have Britton Strange as kind of the tight end too. And our QB1 and running back 1 are both on the last years of their rookie deals. So with all that said, does it make sense to trade for a wide receiver and then had to turn around and pay him when all these guys are making all this money on the offense? And keep in mind, if the Jaguars were to do this trade for Brandon Aiyuk, isn't that basically the same exact thing as what the Jaguars did in 2022 for Calvin Ridley? And I know, look, I was there too. When the Jaguars traded for Calvin Ridley, I'm like, okay, look, he's going to play on his 5th-year option, but look, we're just going to sign him to a new deal when it's done. It'll be quick, fast, and easy. We learned in real time about what? It's still fresh, 3 days ago, that it doesn't always work out like that. We basically just threw away a 3rd rounder for a 1-year rental on a Calvin Ridley, only for him to sign with our division rival. What's to say we don't trade for Brandon Aiyuk, and next offseason we're talking about he's playing for the Houston Texans or the Colts. You know what I mean? So all this is very, very familiar territory for me. And with this, if I were the Jacksonville Jaguars, You would be getting a proven wide receiver in Brandon Aiyuk and a player I love, but why don't you just trust your scouting? Why don't you just, for the first time, draft a wide receiver? Trent Baalke in his Jaguars tenure has never spent more than a 6th-round pick on a wide receiver. It's kind of time to go young at that position and, draft someone in the first couple days of the draft. And look, wide receivers are one of those positions that, dude, they're found everywhere, man. Like, if you look at Brandon Aiyuk, he was the 25th overall pick in the 2020 NFL draft. He was a 6th receiver off the board. If you look at a T. Higgins, he was the number 33 pick, a 2nd rounder in that same draft. He was the 7th wide receiver chosen. If you look at the guys that were top 5 in receiving yards this year, Tyreek Hill was a 5th-round pick. CeeDee Lamb was number 17 overall pick. The Jaguars have the 17th overall pick this year. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 4th-round pick. Puka Nacua, a rookie, was a 5th-round pick in the 2023 NFL draft. A.J. Brown was a 2nd-rounder. With all that said, guys, I think it's best for the Jaguars just to trust the scouting department, and I understand Trent Baalke's track record with drafting wide receivers. It's probably been his worst position when it comes to how he's drafted. And, you could even say the same about Doug Peterson. I think Doug Peterson was a guy that wanted Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. So, maybe you don't have the best guys in the building, but at the end of the day, man, trust your scouting department. Figure out, okay, which guy do we feel has the most upside? You can find these guys all over the place. And look, it's a wide receiver deep draft, okay? There's a very good chance that the best receiver off the board this year goes in the 3rd or 4th round, okay? So it's time to invest a draft pick in there, not have to trade away a draft pick to turn around and pay them a bunch of money, and then all of a sudden we're looking at 2025 and it's like, dude, our cap situation is weird and we have to pay our quarterback. You know what I mean? So that's what I would do if I were the Jaguars. Just find a guy, scout a guy. There's going to be some guys that might fit the profile there at number 17, or maybe they wait for the 2nd round, or maybe they wait for the 3rd round. You know what I mean? We'll just have to see. So with all that said, let me know what you guys think. Do me a favor, please drop a like on your way out so YouTube will recommend this video to more people. And thank you to BetUS for sponsoring this video. With all that said, you guys have a good weekend. I'm out. Peace.